Well, greetings for today's devotional. We are going to go over the kingdom parable of the wedding feast given in Matthew. Now, Lisa went over this same parable, but she went over Luke's account. And I think you'll find the emphasis in Matthew is a little bit different and is a little bit maybe even darker in tone and feel. And so let's take a look at this parable that Jesus gives in Matthew 22, 1 through 14. Jesus spoke to them again in parable, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, 'Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My ox and fattened calf have been butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized the servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his servant, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invite did not deserve to come. So go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man who was not wearing wedding clothes. He asked, 'How did you get here without wedding clothes, friend?' The man was speechless. The king told the attendees, 'Tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen.'" Now, the first thing I guess I want us to see is, in context, I think we're talking about the relationship between Israel, the Jews, and many in that rejected the gospel. And so God opens up the gospel to the Gentiles. And as we've talked about, God's desire is for the whole world to have access to the gospel, both Jew and Gentile. And so he's giving access to all to the gospel. But there are many who are going to reject it. And so sometimes we can talk about the gospel work in terms of it's a very simple thing for us to do. We just sow the seed of the gospel and God does the work. But I don't want us to misunderstand that the work is still very difficult. It is hard work. And in fact, there's a reason that he calls it, labor. The laborers are few, right? The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Labor implies that it still is hard work. Now, it's easy because all we have to do is share. But in sharing, there's still going to be many obstacles. There's going to be persecution. There's going to be people that are going to make it very difficult, and they're going to try to convince us that maybe we shouldn't be doing this, that we should just keep it to ourselves, that religion is a personal thing. That is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, God commands us to share the gospel with all people, with the nations, every tribe, tongue, and people, right? And so we can't withhold the gospel because people outside don't want to receive it. We have to continue on. We have to press on. And so that's the first thing I want us to see. The second thing that I want us to look at in this parable is something that I think every time I read this parable, I'm just disturbed by it. As we come to this man who comes to the wedding feast and he's not wearing the wedding clothes. And I've often wondered, why would he kick that man out? He's inviting anybody, right? Both good and bad, and this man shows up, but he's not there because he received the invitation, and that is key for us. Now, when we look at the context of Ireland, I'm sitting in front of this map of Ireland, kind of a global perspective. And we look at Ireland, and many times when you think of Ireland, we get confused in thinking, isn't Ireland mostly Christian? And I think about this parable, and I think about the man who's at the wedding feast who doesn't have an invitation. How did he show up? Did he hear the hustle and bustle and just kind of pop in? Did he see the invitation people handing out invitations and just wanted to find out what was going on? Or did they even offer him an invitation and he politely said, "Oh, no, thank you," but was curious to find out more? We don't really know. It doesn't tell us how that is. But we do know that to enter the kingdom of heaven, again, this parable is talking about the kingdom. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like this, and he equates this story to the kingdom. And so who then is able to enter the kingdom? Those who have an invitation. Now, the invitation for us certainly is the gospel. But when we think again in the context of Ireland, there are many in Ireland who would consider themselves spiritual people. They believe that there is a God, and maybe have even a basic understanding of who Jesus is. But that in itself is not salvation. Jesus says in Matthew 7:21 through 23, says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the ones who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? In your name did we not drive out demons and perform miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" And now to me, that is just heartbreaking that there are so many who have maybe seen and understand the invitation, but they think they're relying on their own good works. I'm a good person. I believe that there's a God. I go to church. Maybe I read my Bible and say my prayers. But God says that is not salvation. God is looking for a personal relationship with us, and he invites us into this relationship through faith in Jesus Christ. And so Jesus says, the Bible tells us in Romans 10:9 through 11, it says, "If we declare with our mouths Jesus is Lord and believe in our hearts that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with the heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved. As the scriptures say, anyone who believes in him will not be put to shame." And so when we think about this parable and we think about this man who is invited into the wedding feast, it's a tragedy that there are so many who know that there's a wedding feast coming, but they have to be invited, and we invite them into this wedding feast with the gospel, and only by believing and putting your faith in Jesus Christ, believing that he came, that he died, that he rose again. And upon believing in your heart that God did that he revealed himself to us in the person of Jesus, that he's risen from the grave, and when we confess that he is Lord, the Bible very clearly says we will be saved. And that is our invitation into the kingdom. And so the world needs this invitation. Your friends, your family members, they need this invitation. All of those in Ireland who know the basics of the gospel, they need the fullness of the gospel, and they need to accept it by believing, putting their faith in Jesus Christ, believing that he died, that he rose again, and confessing with their mouth that he is Lord. And so that is our big challenge. Our desire is that none should perish, because that's God's will. That's his desire, right? And so we don't want anybody in Ireland to be separated from God in eternity because they thought they were good enough to enter the kingdom on their own merits, on their own good works, or their basic understanding of what they think religion is. We want them to receive and understand the truth of the gospel, that many will enter the kingdom, and we will celebrate one day together at this wedding feast. And the King hopefully will say to all of us, "Well done, good and faithful servants." And so I don't want this to be a discouragement. I want it to be an encouragement, that we would press on, that we would understand it's going to be difficult, that we will be persecuted. People will tell us we shouldn't be doing what we're doing, but we have to press on. We have to let people know that there's good news and that there's salvation in Jesus Christ. And God bless you in this day.